Alright, hey everyone out there in Banjo land, Mike Heading here. I was due for a string change on my banjo, so I figured it'd be a good time to do a short lesson on how to change your strings. I get a lot of questions from students on how often should I change my strings, and do I have any tips, tricks on the best practices for changing strings. So I'm going to go over some of those. I change my strings quite a bit, probably even once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks, but I play a lot and I play out, perform a lot, so I'm not suggesting that you need to change your strings that much, but it's good to know what new strings feel like and what used strings feel like, and then you can find your right balance on when it's time to change your strings. So I use these strings GHS PF145, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way other than I like the strings, and through experimentation and trying different sets, I found that those sound the best on this banjo and are the best for me. So those are the ones I like, and let's start breaking down the lesson. Here we go. Alright, so let's start by changing. I'm going to start with the G string, so my third string. You can really start with whichever one you want. It's not overly important which one you start with. The main thing you want to remember with banjo though is you've got a movable bridge, so you only want to take off the strings one at a time. It's the same with mandolin. It's different than a guitar where you could take all the strings off at once. You don't want your bridge to move while you're changing the strings, so just take them off one at a time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the G string. So I usually take it off on this side. And then I've got this string locked, and I'll show you how to do that. And the better the lock is, that sometimes it's hard to get out. There we go. The other little trick I usually do is I usually tie the old strings up in just a knot, just so I don't accidentally put on the same string that I just took off. Probably don't have to worry about that too much, but I always just do that. It makes them easier to find them and throw them away as well. So I'm grabbing a 13, that's my middle third string. And you might not be able to see this from the video, but I've got the hole of the tuner peg pointing this way, so it's going perpendicular to the headstock, not parallel. So it's coming at a right angle, and that'll help when I put the string on. So you can just turn your peg and get that set. Okay, for this side, sometimes I'll put a little bend in the string. So I'm going to put that on. I'm going to slip that. Everyone's tailpiece is going to be a little different than mine, so just attach it however it works with your banjo. Mine has this little groove that it goes under and then attaches back here, but yours might be different. Some have a clamp that goes down, some feed through a hole. I've seen different designs basically. So the first thing you want to do is get this side set in, and then I'm going to feed this through, and I'm going to go from the inside to the outside. And that's why it's important to have that going perpendicular. So see how I've got that? So I'm not going up, I went from the inside of the headstock to the outside. And then you're going to put a little slack in the string. And that just takes a little bit of practice to figure out how much. I usually put enough, you know, you don't want to have not enough slack. It's better to have too much slack than not enough. And then the next step I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the string up. So I bent the string up, straight up toward the headstock. See that? So it was going out that way, and now I'm going to go straight up. Then I'm going to turn it around, go under the string, and then pull it tight. So now I'm basically about to make a knot, and then I'm going to flip it back over the other way. So I went up, around and under, and then I flipped it back over. Up, around and under, and I flipped it back over. And the trick is you have to keep this tight. If this is too loose, then you can't flip it back over and make a good knot. So once I got that locked in, I can bend this string up like that, and that thing isn't going to go anywhere because I locked it into place really well. Then I can start tightening it up. And the only other little trick you want to remember is that you want the new wraps on the bottom, so that you're not wrapping over the old stuff. So the wraps are going down. So I push on this string right here to kind of slide it under the old stuff, the original stuff that was wrapped on there. It's a little hard to explain, but it'll hopefully make sense when you're changing the strings. So then when I'm wrapping it, all that tension is pushing up and holding that lock into place rather than pushing down on it. So once you get it, you can just start tuning it up. The other little trick is make sure you're on securely back here and in the right groove before you really tighten it up. You obviously, if you're not in that groove for the bridge and you tighten that up, it's going to make a new groove in your bridge, so you got to be careful with that. Make sure you've got it in the correct groove. And then what I'll do is I'll just get it close. You know, you don't have to be exact because it's going to stretch anyway. The other thing I'll do is I'll kind of pull up lightly on the string. I don't know if you can see that. I'm just doing it with one finger, my right finger. I'm just pulling up, basically trying to pull some of that tension out of the string. And don't do it too hard, obviously, but see how the string went flat when I pulled up a little bit on it? That's a good indication that it's still stretching out. So I basically do that 3 or 4 times. And again, just get it in the general area. It doesn't have to be exactly perfect right off the bat. And then at some point I'll cut this off, but I'll usually leave it on there for a little bit and make sure that string is on there securely. If you cut this off too prematurely and the string slips because you didn't have a good wound on it, then you have to change the string because you don't have enough slack. So I usually leave this on there for a little bit just to make sure the string's on there. It's not going to slip at all. And if it does, then I've got plenty of slack and I don't have to change the string. So now I'm taking off the D string. So remember, we're only changing them one at a time. And I'll tie that up in a knot. My D string is a 22, stainless steel 22. That's the gauge of the string. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get it set back here. I put a little crimp in it, like that. I slide it under. Again, your tailpiece might be different, but that's how mine works. I slide it under that little groove, set it in the space of the bridge. Now I'm going to come down here. Remember, I'm going to go from the inside out. See that? So I'm going from the inside toward the outside. Get a little slack right over here. Bend it up. So I basically make a 90-degree angle. So now the string's going straight up toward the headstock. Remember, I go around and then under the string. And you want to make sure you don't loop any of the other strings. So make sure you don't go under the 3rd string or anything like that. I've got it. I'm holding it right here with my right hand. And now I'm going to flip it back over. So I'm going to flip it back over really quick. So now I made a knot. And then I can tighten it up. The other thing I'll do is I'll push this down right here. So I'm just pushing on the 4th string to, again, get that wrap to go under the lock. So then it's pushing it up. Make sure that's in place there. And again, just get it close because it's going to stretch anyway. So then I'll pull on the string a little bit and stretch it out. I'll just get it close. I don't worry about getting it in tune right away. All right, now we're onto the 5th string. So same thing. I'm going to loosen my 5th string up here. I pull it off from this side. And I'm going to unwind it. Again, get the hole of the tuner going perpendicular to the neck. So the hole is going out that way. Gonna tie this up in a knot again like I've been doing. Got my 5th string. I have a 10. That's the gauge of the 5th string for the strings I use. Just unwind the string here. I get this set. I always get this side set first. Flip that under there so that's on there. Get it set in the peg. And if it comes off, that's okay too. You know, you might have to reset it at some point. And then remember, I'm going from the inside and always going out. So I'm always going from the inside hole of the tuner peg to the outside. I usually like to leave a little bit more slack on the 5th string than I normally do, just because that string's a little bit lighter gauge than the other one. So I like to put a little bit more wrap. I don't know if it actually does anything, but I like to. And then remember, I went up, around, and under the string. Then I pull both ends tight, and then I flip my left hand back over the tuning post. And then that locks the string. And you have to hold both ends really tight, otherwise you're not going to get a tight wrap around the tuning post. And then I push down with my right hand. See how I'm using my finger right here? I'm holding the string down. That's going to ensure that the string doesn't go above those wraps, that it goes below it. And then I set my fifth string. My fifth string has a little railroad spike right there that the string sits under. So make sure you're set back here and you're in the groove of the bridge and you're not making a new one. And then start tuning it up. Once you got it locked, it's not going anywhere. So. Just get it in the general area. The other thing I'll do is I'll pull on these other strings. You know, the other ones that I've already changed. Because your strings, when you first change them, they're going to be stretching out. So, you know, it's pretty normal. See how I'm pulling on this with my right hand up here? You can see that. Basically, the reason why I'm doing that is I'm stretching them out prematurely. Otherwise, when you're playing, you're picking the strings. That tension is going to be pulled out of the string and you're going to have to keep tuning it up. So basically what I'm doing is I'm pulling some of that tension out of the string, so then I just have to do that less while I'm playing. Alright, now let's do the B string and the first string. Alright, now I'm onto the second string, so the B string. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it down. Pull that off. Pull it off this side. And it gets a little trickier when these ones on these thinner strings sometimes to get them out, so you have to kind of loosen them a little bit. The other thing is, if this side gets really tangled up, you know, if you have a really good lock on there, the only problem with that is sometimes it's even trickier to take them off. The other thing I'll do is sometimes if I can't get it off, I'll clip it right here with a wire and then just pull it out, or a wire clipper, and then just pull it out the other way. But usually you can kind of feed it through. But alright, so here's a good example of that. I couldn't get it out that easily, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip it right here and then pull it out this way. That way it'll come out. And I'm going to tie my string up in a knot again just so I don't lose it later. Unwind the string so strings come wound up. And I get it set over here first. Remember, I pinch it down a little bit like that. Slide it under there. Remember, your tailpiece might be different. Got the hole going out, so it's going perpendicular to the headstock. Remember, always go from the inside out. You see that? Got it going from the inside out. I get a little slack on the string. First thing I do is I bend it up. So I bend it up. Then I'm going to go back under this, around and under the string. Pull it tight. Hold it tight with this hand. Got both hands pulled tight. I'm going to flip it back over. And then kind of push it down. Flip it back over and push it down. Then I can start tightening it up. Then I'll flip this under. So I get it under the wrap. And that takes a little bit of practice. So, you know, all these little string changing things are, at least for me, I just had to do it 1,000 times to kind of keep practicing it, and I'm always getting a little better or trying to get a little better. I still poke myself occasionally, so that's, you know, that's all part of the process. You don't have to get it precise, just get it in the ballpark. Then I'm stretching it out a little bit, see that? I'm pulling it up a little bit. You can hear it went flat. Alright, so I got that one in the general ballpark. I'm going to take this one off. That one came off easily. So again, get the hole going out perpendicular, not parallel to the headstock. I'm going to tie my string up in a knot again, just so I don't get it confused with the other new string. The other thing I'll do on this side is just kind of make sure occasionally that my bridge didn't start tilting forward too much. If you only took off one at a time, that shouldn't be as big of an issue, but you know, I like to keep the tension on all the strings except for one on the bridge, so then the bridge doesn't have a tendency to move. You know, if you loosen all of them, then the bridge is going to be more susceptible to moving, which will affect your intonation, which you don't want. So last one, again, get it set on this side. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go from the inside out like I've always been doing. Make sure, again, you don't go under the B string or anything like that. You know, you can see that I'm not under any of those other strings. Get a little bit of slack. Again, I'll leave a little bit more on this one than I do on the other ones because it's just a thinner string. Same way I did with my fifth string. I went up, around, and under, and I've got both of them tight. I'm going to flip it back over. And you really have to flip it quick, and that just takes practice. If you don't flip it fast enough, then it doesn't lock and you get slack in there. That's why it's really important to hold this tight. See, I'm holding this with my left hand. I'm holding the string up. That's critical to getting that lock to be tight. And then I'll just, again, I get it in the ballpark. Now this is usually when I'll grab my tuner, pop on my tuner, and then get them all tuned up. And you're gonna have to tune quite a bit, you know, so just get it in the ballpark. I'll do that. I'll stretch them out one more time. And then this is when, now that I've got them all tuned up and I make sure that all of them are in place and not going anywhere, then I'll clip them. And I leave a little bit of slack just in case it ever does slip. But you don't want to leave too much, otherwise you can poke yourself when you're tuning. So I just use a standard Leatherman wire clipper. Nothing particular about that. I just cut those, cut that one a little shorter. Alright, so that's the basics.